Man, I feel like this has been something that I've been dreaming up doing something like this for a long time. So I'm super honored that you
Uh,
would be willing to do this. And
Dude, happy
um,
to. Thanks
cool.
for inviting me.
I feel like there's a million ways that I would want to start this conversation. And so I think the easiest, based on kind of the series that we're in and knowing what you're up to, the easiest way would be you are working on a book right now. And I think that the title of that book is so significant to your journey. And so
Oh,
I'd love if you would just tell us a little bit about what what's kind of the journey that you describe in the book. Obviously read the book, so but just kind of an overview
yeah.
of and really specifically like the title, and tell us how that kind of factored into your life.
Yeah, well, the title is Life is a Gift, Love is the Point. How I lost my faith, killed my church, saved my life, and found my soul. Yeah.
It's a good one.
So in it's really kind of goes through, not chronologically, but it covers my experience growing up in church, becoming a minister, leading a megachurch, and then going through, um, I didn't put this in the book, but I've often described it as falling out of the tree of Christianity and hitting every branch on the way down over a number of years, and then leading our church through full inclusion of the LGBT community in 2015, the chaos that ensued as a result of that, trying to sort of take a huge evangelical megachurch and see if there was anything left after all of the strife and difficulty that caused, as well as the good. How do we? Is it possible to piece something back together? Um, and then into a journey with cancer, which I had in 2017, and then covering a little bit more of like why I stayed for a few more years to sort of, in some ways, kind of take back things I had taught. To spend years recovering ground and trying to correct at some level my own understanding of how I had propagated not only ideas and systems that no longer fit me, but things that hurt people. And I think that, at least in my view, were unhelpful at best and painful and counterproductive at worst. And then from there on into my experiences with psychedelic drugs and recontextualizing what relationships mean, how I view partnership now, and then what does it look like to move beyond deconstruction, which I think can sometimes be a little bit of a cul-de-sac that people get stuck in. They just sort of set up tent there. And I wanted to talk about why that's not enough and why we need to keep moving from there and finding ways to hold life as sacred, new ways of approaching, um, religious symbolism if it's still relevant to people, and then how to bring the good parts of, that tradition and other spiritual paths into a more grounded, very human sense of present spirituality in a sense. So that's kind of the full arc of what I talk about, at least what I'm trying to talk about. We'll see. I just sent you a copy to red line for me, but yeah, excited about it. Really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And you describe this journey of coming from a tradition that in many ways the value system can get very convoluted with dogma and doctrine. And so I know that at some point for you, there was this, I know it was a longer shift, but really encapsulated in the simplifying of everything down to this really beautiful and potent ethos of life as a gift, love as a point. Would you share a little bit about how you came to that, and then how does that function for you? Like like when you draw upon that, when you lean on that
Yeah.
as an ethos, what does that look like in your life?
Yeah. Good question. So I think to get there was this long process that I talked about, which is a lot of deconstruction. So once I let go of an inerrant view of scripture, an infallible Bible, then I had to go, what are we even talking about when we say the word, the name Jesus or God? And rather than having this sort of adolescent overreaction and just tossing everything out, is there a way to glean what's beautiful from this narrative without getting lost in arguments about the historicity or things that are neither provable nor disprovable, and land on something that's helpful? And then when I got cancer, it was kind of a clarifying moment, because I was like, faced with mortality, which in the book and certainly in my life, death, I think, has become like a centering force for me to really like burn the chaff away of what I don't care about anymore. And that was the season of my life where I realized I used to have all these beliefs. Most of them, frankly, were agreements. They weren't my own beliefs that came through mining my own actual experience. They were things that were handed to me, and I was told this was the truth. So by that point, it was like, man, I don't know how many beliefs I have anymore besides I'm happy to be here. What is this? I don't know, right? Psychedelics had blown my mind apart, and I was trying to put together, at least epistemologically, like, what can I know anyway to even stack a bunch of beliefs on each other? And I think I probably took a little bit more of the path of like phenomenology, or the idea of like, what am I experiencing? Right? My own understanding of the universe is the only useful understanding of the universe that's going to help me, a la Terence McKenna. And I was like, this is, not easy. It's certainly difficult, tragic world, but it's amazing. And wow, I'm really happy to be here. So that was the first movement, right? Life is a gift. I believe that this is amazing. And that doesn't presuppose, for me anyway, a giver. I guess I've come to a place where I'm just like, my experience is that one day, at some point, maybe 6 years old or something, I kind of woke up to self-conscious awareness and was like, I'm having an experience. And to my knowledge, I showed up here. I didn't make all this, and I want to receive it in gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, in some ways, life is a gift, love is the point. You can distill it to where it's like it's two virtues, gratitude and love. And I wanted to sort of be able to reflect back to my reality, or to reality itself, like, I'm happy, thank you. And so that's really the mantra. You go from life is a gift, love is the point, into the virtues, gratitude and love, and then into the mantra, thank you, I love you. And I think the reason that's helpful to me is because everything we do as human beings is sort of going through this tunnel of relationship. Like, we relate to everything. Sometimes we get lost in like the theological categories of like personhood or source or whatever. And if we just set all that aside, like, we relate to everything. Like, we talk to our cars. Okay, we're like, come on, buddy. You know what I mean? So no matter how intellectual we think we are, this is how we approach reality. We relate to it. We speak to it. We yell at it. We argue with it. And rather than try and like intellectualize myself into some sort of really tight understanding of metaphysical truth, I just gave up on that. I was like, relating is just natural to the human person. And so I wanted to begin there. This is a gift. And I actually just, pragmatically, Jake, it just feels better. It feels better to say thank you to life, to say thank you to when I take a walk out here in Bend, Oregon, here in the mountains, and I look at the trees and I smell the pines and the rivers going by, and I look at it and I reflect my gratitude. Thank you. Wow, so beautiful, And then the second movement, love is the point, is hopefully a little bit more direct and easy to grasp. But to me, that's more embodied. I think that when I lost the religious framework of that sort of Judeo-Christian narrative, the next kind of thing I ran into in the neighborhood of spirituality is this sort of like ooey gooey, hippy dippy, we're all one, love as like this allowance for what is. And I think that's fine. I'm not disagreeing that that's a definition of some kind of love, but we lost something there in relationship to like grounded action. Like, it was no longer connected to or at least for me, as connected to redemptive work for good and love that's real gritty. Like the kind of love that I experienced when my wife was handing me a puke bucket and rubbing my back. Like that's fucking love right there. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, we're good. We're cruising.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One time I actually got, I think, reprimanded for not cursing enough.
Okay, good. My kind of place. So,
Oh,
now
you're
I
just
lost my
saying
train
what
of thought.
love,
What was it?
grounded, embodied, gritty, real.
Right. So yeah. So I think that's the focus for me in this. Not that there isn't some sort of like seventh dimensional love, which is just like full awareness without differentiation or judgment. I'm fine with that kind of like philosophical banter, but only as a sideshow. To me, I'm like, here we are. I don't know if there's another dimension or whatever. I've certainly experienced things that seem like that, but those are all happening in my own awareness. So I don't know if that's a objective truth or whether that's just something that's just rattling around in my brain. But I do know that people hurt here. I've seen and I've seen people suffer, and I have suffered. Therefore, the virtue to me is still really important, and I appreciate the Judeo-Christian tradition for its approach to reality that our participation matters. I think is kind of what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So love is the point. Grounded action on behalf of alleviating the suffering of one another because we're all connected as family, whether that's human and the non-human world as well. That's where it lands for me. So did I
Oh
answer all
my
your
gosh,
questions
yeah,
there?
absolutely. And I think for you, it's clear that that was through the mining of your own soul, as you describe it, and that's the work that you help other people do. And I know that like part of the work that you do now, and I love the way you describe it as unspiritual direction, right? Is I getting that right? I wrote it down as
Yeah.
spiritual undirection. And I was like, no, it's unspiritual direction. And so I just like
I used to sell certainty. Now I sell confusion.
so just to do a role play here, let's just say like I'm someone who's coming to you and I feel very disoriented. Maybe I've experienced like a deep loss of a sense of getting my values from a certain framework and system from before, and I've gone through some kind of deconstruction or just new experience of that. So I'm coming to you, and I'm saying, Ryan, I I don't know where to even start when it comes to discovering what are my values, like what do I value most, and how do I live a life from that place. How do you guide people and lead people in that way?
Well, I probably would begin by saying just like paradigmatically or like my framework of working with anyone is not to, which is different than the book, but it's not to tell them what to think. It's to ask questions that evoke, right? Whatever's already in there, kind of like poking the tiger, so to speak. And so like things like what breaks your heart, you know? What makes you feel alive? It's taking them through questions that, because people, when I've never met anyone who says that and then doesn't immediately have things that break their heart or make them come alive, what fills them with joy. Sometimes I think, especially for people who come from maybe the Abrahamic religions and have deconstructed that, they forget that like your joy and your passionate excitement and your pleasure are part of your value set. And those are good things, and that we need to chase those. It's usually like, what things should I do is sort of the old default. Like we can exit the whole theological framework and then still have a structure there. Like I've met the most evangelical atheists, right? You can imagine, because they used to be evangelicals and then they get rid of the content, but the structure's still there, right? So, yeah, so I think that's a part of it is like what breaks your heart, right? That's just one of those classic, I can't remember who said it, but it's like with the needs of the world and your own passions where those intersect. I'm butchering the quote, but that's what the world is longing for us to connect those things and meet those, because then we're giving from a place of like alignment and joy. Like, this is what I love doing. Another question is like, what problems do you like to solve, right? How do you engage in a way that's like it's work, right? It's a thing to participate in, but it's the kind of work that I woke up this morning at like 3:45 and I tried to keep sleeping. And at 4:15, I'm like, I got to get up and I'm going to get on this book. I want to finish those last edits. That's the kind of work, that can enliven us and begins to, breadcrumb us to our values. Like, oh, this is something I'm actually passionate about. I
Wow.
like this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Wow. So, I mean, I think that to do that, often we need to sort of, it requires like being honest with ourselves and really kind of digging deep. And I think a word that in our relationship, something that you have really taught me is this idea of unmasking. And I know we really dove into that in Bolivia. And I would love to hear just how you look at unmasking as this really important way of navigating life in a true way, and maybe kind of tie that into values of how is it possible that we can really understand what we really value, what breaks our heart, because we might not be able to access what breaks our heart if we have all these layers of just like who we think we are and stuff. So maybe talk about how you help people achieve that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, even just kind of picking up with what I'm hearing from you is like, and because I would agree, we're numb. Sometimes there's a numbness that can be the result of trauma and loss, which, I mean, is there a difference? Loss is traumatic. But because we hurt so bad, we callous over, and it's not a bad thing. It's a protective mechanism, just like, on your hands. It's there to help you. But the point of any kind of protection, whether it's a cast on your arm or otherwise, is to eventually move beyond it. And I don't think people are really ready to have the proverbial ice sculpture melt away until there's safety. So first and foremost, I think it's safety, right? So in my work, like the first step is to develop rapport so that the relationship itself is a container of compassionate acceptance for what's here. Like there's nothing but yes that you're going to receive here so that true words can come through, right? People are so used to cultivating different kinds of masks for different environments and relationships and roles that they play. And so it's going to take a while first to do that. And I think in communities, it's the same thing. We have to create an environment long before people are ready to drop a mask. They have to know, not here, but here, because they're going to feel it here first anyway, way before it gets to the brain. The body's already like unsafe before you can have a thought about it. So people have to kind of settle in to that safety. And then from there, I think it's just progressive invitation that we offer one another, whether again in my professional work or I think it's the same in life and in community. What makes life worth living is the richness of our connections, of our relationships. And so we have to encourage each other through our own disclosure. As I drop my mask, you're invited to join me, kind of a thing, right? And then reflect back to each other the safety of being able to do that, like acknowledging the difficulty. If someone does drop a mask and share something, I think maybe the first thing before even dealing with, wow, who's here now, is to acknowledge the sacrifice of dropping it in the first place. Wow, I just want to say thank you for, the risk you just took to disarm, yourself. And, that's just all a part of cultivating that kind of safety. I think Gabor Mate is so good at articulating a lot of this stuff about how to create that kind of safety, in his, certainly all of his books, but then in his compassionate inquiry training and things like that, just talking about unless there's safety, and that requires quite a few different steps of reestablishing safety. I mean, a lot of what you do at the community, I'm sure, I remember this was a huge part of my job, is protecting the culture, right? It's not like you just get to sit and write sermons all the time. It's like this dynamic thing, this little city that you have at your little church is alive. and it can like go another direction if we don't protect, like, who are we, what makes us a we, and how do we continue to protect that ethos, that vision, that certain je ne sais quoi that makes this a particularly, hopefully, important place for people to let go, to relax, to be themselves, to tell the truth, to come alive, and to be hopefully fueled up to then re-engage with life. I mentioned in the book the philosopher Loyal Rue, who talks about, he has a great book called Religion is Not About God. Um, but one of the things I appreciate about him is he says, religion's function evolutionarily was to give people a narrative arc, a larger story to find themselves within, so that they could, one, look to the past with gratitude instead of regret, two, look to the future with hope instead of despair, and three, to inspire people to be able to engage the present struggle for the good of the broader community. And so in order to do that, like, hopefully that's what we're all about in all of the communities we try to create, but especially in, whatever you want to call what you guys are doing, spiritual community, that requires like ongoing, it's like the Sistine Chapel, like, or the San Francisco Bay Bridge, like as soon as you're done painting, you start all the way over. And it's like constantly making sure, are we still the place we set out to be, and where we gotten off track, and how can we
Wow. Yeah.
get back.
Wow. And so I think part of it is you create safety and you create a context where we feel safe enough and open enough to allow naturally our true self to come forth. That's certainly one way to discern our values. But, and I know as you have really explored another path, you might say, or it's all the same path, but another way into all this is kind of recognizing the temporary nature of life. And so you've talked about how important death is to you.
Yeah.
I know that, in your own story, you've become it's become like something like an acquaintance or a friendship, right? Like a love, like you develop this relationship with death rather than what our culture so often does, which says like, turn away from it, brush it to the side. And so I know that you've spoken a lot about death as sort of this compass, right? It's like it can clarify so easily what matters. And so, I'd love if you just share how death is an ally in the pursuit of values.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like death is the cheerleader, man. Is going, hey, we have an appointment, so get on it, right? Like, now's the time. Everything yesterday, or really like 5 seconds ago, death has claimed, right? It's just like chewing up right behind on your heels. And it's a reminder, one, not to live in the past. Like, that is, keep looking back into the void of nothing. Or we can look forward, be present to what's here, which is what I feel like letting go of certainty about, what happens when we die. Like, I have hopes, like, I mentioned in the book, like, I want there to be a thing. I want there to be a loving thing that's holding it all together that we can sort of fade back into at the end of life. I'm not saying there isn't. I just don't know. I've had experiences that make me feel like that. I've done psychedelic drugs that make me confident. And then, I come back and I'm like, I don't know. Where I wish I was like full of faith about it. But I think the positive side of letting go of that, not clinging to it, but like, God, I really hope that's true. But in this space of not knowing if it is, mortality is like even hotter. Like, it's like, well, if it's not, then this is it, right? And you look out at the world and the miracle of a newborn child and into the eyes of the people that you love, and it's like, this ain't nothing, but it might be everything. And the paradox of that is, if I live like it's everything, then I might actually live a life that's so beautiful, it might be worth continuing for eternity, right? So, yeah, I think that's where mortality, I'm covered in skulls, like just because I think one day I just looked down like, wow, it's pretty kind of morbid, like like a little bit of a death fetish here. But it's not because I'm like fixated on like what is grotesque or awful. I find death to be like I'm like carving it all over myself. Like this is coming. Live like it's going to be over because it
I
is.
think I heard you on another podcast say something to the effect of, and I would hate to butcher it because it's your quote, so you can reclaim it. Something to the effect of, when you
Give it.
were facing cancer and thinking like, how do I want to, essentially like, how do I want to be as I'm dying, and then let me live that way.
Oh yeah,
Maybe,
yeah, yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, that was a big cancer awareness for me. Because when you get an illness, it on the one hand it feels like you got screwed by your own body. You're like, what the like your body is growing something, and it feels like a betrayal. Like I want to decide how I want to die. I don't want to have somebody come in and pull the carpet out from under me in at 38 years old. And that awareness made me realize like wanting to control the circumstances of how I die. Like, how do I want to die then? And I thought, well, I'd like to live, till old age, and I want to spend my last few moments, if I'm conscious for them. I know what I want to do. I know that I want to be like, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for being in my life. Like, and I just want to forgive everything and just pour out, like I don't want to have anything left, like almost just like puking out every last ounce of energy of love that could possibly be in my body, spend it all. And I realized in that moment, if that's how I want to die, then that's how I should live. Like the answer to how I want to die is the answer to how shall I then live, which I think is an old Francis Schaeffer question. um so yeah, I do this like little thought experiment. Like imagine on the way home, you're driving and you get in a car accident and you go through the windshield and you're on the street and you're bleeding out, and like this is it. Like you can see the lights going around and people are freaking out or whatever, and it's just like your own blood is. See, I can be morbid, but it's for a purpose. People, hang with me. I feel you leaving. But I know if I have the opportunity to be conscious, and I do believe this about others, like if we have the opportunity to consciously think, we are not in that moment going to be like, dude, Brad owes me $15 still. You know what I mean? Like there's not going to be the bitterness, the debts, all the stuff that we freak out about all the time. All of a sudden, death itself will burn it all away. And hopefully the goodness in me will be like, did I give it all away? Did I love? Did I say thank you? Did the people know that I love them just the way I do? My sons know I'm proud of them, like all of those things. And that's going to be it. Nothing else is going to matter. And therefore, once again, the reverse is, then that's what I should be up to, right? That is the work of expressing what I'm here to express. You think about a firework, you light it off, it shoots up into the sky, it blows its contents out in a beautiful array of light and design, and then falls back to the earth. I think that is what life ought to be, right? What is inside you? Who are you? Get out there and take the risks and do the things and fall in love and have your heart broken and express what you have to express for this time, this little moment you have, and then fall back to source, to reality. And maybe that's just this infinitely beautiful, intelligent thing called eternal life that Earth has been doing for 4.5 billion years. And
Yeah.
maybe it's even better than that. But that's the kind of life that's worth finding out
Well,
anyway.
I mean, I can't think of a better place to end. That's quite a crescendo.
Then
Quite a
death.
crescendo. So, oh man. Well, I'm so grateful.
Yeah,
Really appreciate just you sharing so deeply, from your heart.
man,
Yeah, man, I
thanks
love
for
you.
asking.
And
Love you, dude.
I more than likely, well, by the time this gets released, there will probably be some more information on people actually being able to get your book. So if so, I will
Yeah,
definitely, we'll,
yeah.
when that time comes, we'll connect it. And people can also connect with you directly as well. Do you want to just plug any of your?
Yeah. My website is
Easy. There you go.
loveisthepoint.com.
Cool. Well, thank you again, man. I'll close it right here. So.
All right.